Citizens of Earth, gird your loins and open your minds. You have now willfully submitted to the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy! Ah! 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 Every time, get the maniacal laugh. It gets a wee bit better. I am known by many names, but today you may call me the Mad Hat Cat. If you must speak of me in the third person, perhaps to proclaim the wonders of our most deviant and devious party, you may use the pronouns they, them, theirs, themselves. And now may I introduce my super villainous associate, Zodiac.
What part of bwahaha do you fail to understand? I am known as Doc Zodiac, mad cult leader, forward-looking visionary, and mixologist extraordinaire, here to show you light and truth as I perceive it. If you must use pronouns, feel free to use him, he, or my lord. We are here to observe, to discuss, to listen, and occasionally make some bloody sense out of this mad world.
And hello to you, my dears. Whether you're watching currently or at a later date, I hope you have had a pleasantly devious week. Thank you for joining us once again. We missed you last week, Doctor. I hope you've been well.
Yes, I've been working my, villainous butt off, bringing various sundry plans to fruition here, there, and everywhere. Pretty soon we will be, underworld domination, mostly of squirrels, but I figure that they can run the show better than most, so.
I mean, they've been doing just fine up in their trees with their nuts and whatnot. As is, or rather has been established many long, well-established days, weeks ago. We've actually been doing this for 6 weeks now. This is technically episode 5,
yes,
officially speaking, but we have been doing it for 6 weeks and starting vaguely on time. I think today was maybe one of our best goes yet.
Yay.
Imagine that. One of these days, and something I'll get into in a minute here, after we do the thing that we normally start every episode with, we will be having more time, or rather I will be having more time and I guess specifically you and I will have more time to work on this, because next week is my last week of front-facing customer service business. I will only be in at work on Mondays where there are no customers. I don't have to answer the phone. I can just do work. I don't have to be exposed to any nonsense, either potentially viral or just, general everyday human nonsense. And also,
which is really some of the most annoying things in the world.
And also little to nothing of my boss.
Double bonus
score. Which like I'm not gonna wish horrible things upon you, but you infuriate me with the way that you do things.
And
what was I talking about? The Party Manifesto. That's what I was talking about. The Party
Manifesto is what you're working on. Yes.
Yes, that was what I wanted to discuss. Me. So, what we will begin with, rule number 1, as soon as I can get my stupid thing back, because I haven't memorized as of yet. I've almost memorized my little intro monologue there, but the rules I am still not really totally memorized on. Rule number 1. Whenever possible, supervillains must treat others with kindness, civility, and respect. One never knows who they might be addressing and what sort of day they've had.
Rule number 2. Hate is hate and should be directed toward systems wicked and behaviors most foul, rather than toward individual persons and groups en masse.
Rule number 3. Thoughtful deviation drives progress. Embrace your considerate deviance and let it guide you.
Rule the 4th. Your thoughts are your thoughts and can never be taken from you. Your words said aloud and your actions in the world have consequences. Choose your words and actions wisely.
I almost threw a little bit of this into a video that I'm scripting right now, but I decided, nah, That's a little too wordy for what I'm trying to do with this edutainment piece.
I can understand.
Rule number 5. The party will not shun the ignorant, but willful ignorance is a crime of the highest degree, and rehabilitation must either be scheduled or performed on the perpetrator's own time.
Also, rehabilitation is not something that you can actually enjoy. So if you're into being whipped and beaten and such, I'm afraid that doesn't actually count. Anyway, rule number 6.
We'll find a different way.
Yes. Rule number 6. The party, much like Socrates, knows for certain that they know nothing for certain and reserves the right to refine and amend its manifesto on an ongoing basis.
That last one is very important, very important. And I don't know, I'm sure maybe after 2 or 3 more months of doing this, because we're over a month now.
Yes.
We're at a month and a half, technically speaking. I imagine maybe we'll at least bring a proposed 7th Amendment, or not 7th Amendment, a First Amendment to the party manifesto to the table, and just,
Okay.
you know, propose, and we will discuss at length what the pros and cons of adding it to the actual manifesto might be.
And actually, that's something that I would look forward to, both of us sitting down and discussing the pros and cons, but also seeing the comments coming in from the various and sundry viewers, all of whom are the sort of people who can definitely give a educated view, or at the very least an informed view on what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and even if it's something, if we're talking about something that whoever is watching is not, you know, completely well informed on, I would love to hear, you know, if something doesn't make sense, if something you know, is maybe a little too on the idealistic side and a little less on the applicable in the meat space side, because I think it's good to have kind of a mix of both. You want things that you can apply in your daily life, and you also want things that you can strive for, even if you never necessarily reach that far off perfection.
Perfection, and let's be perfectly honest, again, we take the Buddhist view on that one. Is it something you
Yes.
can achieve? No. Is it something that you should strive for? Yes, because in the process, you learn an awful lot as you go along.
In particular, I want to say a quick shout out and hello. I don't know if you were the first one to pop in, Han, but hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us yet again. I know that us starting as late as we do is a little bit of a trial for you, since this is technically late hour for you, but I do appreciate your presence. So what is, I kind of jumped the gun on the starting off of our sandwich here, Dave, and because I just couldn't contain myself. My nice thing to start us off with was, you know, the only one more week of being at work when there are customers about. And yeah, I just like the overwhelming elation that I am experiencing because of that. Like, yesterday was actually a pretty irritating day for me, because it was pretty nonstop, and like I didn't feel an acute sense of upset with any one particular person over any one particular thing. Just, it was just one of those days where I was highly irritated, which I don't care for, because I'm not a person who's like irritated very often, and if I am that way for a great length of time, it the dissonance bangs against my skull, and I need to get the fuck out. But what's your nice thing?
That was pretty much my nice thing for this particular week was my the minions have come along and fixed my heating system, which was very nice. It wasn't like I ever lost heat, but the motor was making this intriguing kind of squealing and screaming noise.
I was going to say your layer seems to be a bit more silent this
Yes.
time, instead of sounding like there is a ghost living in your ceiling.
And for that, there is much rejoicing, because that sound had been there for a bit, but it kind of went from about 45 dB to close to, and I literally measured this using a decibel meter.
You measured the decibels?
Yes.
Of course you would. That's why I teamed up with you.
Yeah, because from
your
time
attention
to time,
to detail.
Yeah, there are times when you sit there and go, How bad is this? Hey, wait a minute. There's a decibel meter on my phone. So when it hit 80 dB and was causing headaches, yeah. And also, I was definitely afraid, especially during the worst of this particular cold snap, that the whole thing was going to melt down. So
yeah, God damn, I'm so done with this weather.
oh
I said
God,
it
yeah.
last week, but I'm going to say it again. I'm so done with this weather. I understand that for a lot more, there are plenty of people where it is colder for longer throughout the year, and not just even in a specific season. But I'm sorry, I was born in 120 in the shade. I don't think I was meant to live in this sort of place.
I, on the other hand, am from the Great White North, alternating between
Yes, you are.
Wisconsin. Yeah, alternating between Wisconsin and Quebec. And what I
Mm-hmm.
have now discovered is I am a bad Canadian. I, ice exists
I
to
don't like to wear shorts in the ice.
I know. I mean, the ice exists to make a hockey rink happen. Aside from that, I've decided that I am going to, at some point in time, pick up my evil lair, grab all the minions, and we're moving out to the Mojave. I'm not sure if it's going to be Nevada or if it's going to be somewhere in California, but it's going to be someplace where they encourage people to be thoroughly weird in really, really hot climates.
I mean, that is in fact where I was born, in the Mojave.
Ah, somehow,
Funnily enough.
I have the sneaking suspicion that there might have been a former nuclear test site involved somewhere along the line.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I'm not.
I mean, that might. Go ahead. Ah,
Hey,
yeah.
hey.
Woo.
As we trip over each other. All, all I'm saying is that, there's an intriguing group of genetics that had to have created a Mad Hat cat, and I'm reasonably certain that somewhere along the line, plutonium had to have been involved as a matter of principle.
One of these days, perhaps I will ask my father about that. Just see what he has to say. I'm like, were you, and in at any time involved with one Dr. Emilius Brown? Just curious.
Can't hurt to look.
Is that why I love rock and roll so much? Not
There
that
could be an
I don't know. I don't know what kind of music Emilius is into. I know what kind of cars he's into.
Oh yeah.
I don't know so much about the music side of things. At least not off the top of my head. I'm sure it's mentioned somewhere in one of the movies. By the way, hello to Rick. Thank you for joining us again. The gang's slowly but surely all coming here as I, like very sneakily but not so sneakily share links on Facebook and on the Discord.
Excuse me.
Oh my. So I don't know if anyone actually saw the episode title that I gave to today. You'll be able to see it in the thumbnail. I've titled today's episode "Personal Finance: The RPG." The reason I have titled it as such is because a couple weeks back I was kind of just going through a routine thought process for me, thinking about just how the fuck does anyone live anywhere ever? How do you save to do anything? I grew up, like upper middle class kind of neighborhood and family. Both of my parents had some type of job for the entirety of my life, and both of them made pretty decent money. And I just don't understand how people who don't live with the amount of money that they made at that time, people who are not only working for themselves, working a minimum wage job, either federal minimum wage or state minimum wage, whichever is the lowest in this scenario. How do you fucking make a living, not just for yourself, but for a family? If you are the primary money earner, or even if you're not, even if you have someone else who is making about as much as you do, and you have offspring, or elders, or like a sibling's kid that you're taking care of, or if you're fostering kids. I know with fostering children, sometimes you get some compensation for that on like a monthly basis, but even then, I just don't understand how anyone short of the people who run companies, or who are in CEO type positions where they don't really necessarily run anything. They're kind of a figurehead who all at the same time wield a lot of actual power. They just don't use it very often, but when they do, it's swift and terrible.
Yeah.
Not that all CEOs are villains, because if they were, I would know them, and we would have discussed this at the last major function, which was before COVID.
All I'm saying is that by and large, the purview of most CEOs is too boring for villainy. It's a total focus on how can I possibly make more money? No, the entire point is get money and then cause trouble. And
Upset the status quo.
Yeah, knock things over. Knock some people on their ass. Do what you need to do, and if you need the money to do it, well, there's a Federal Reserve Bank, and you have minions. Go to work and make that happen. I'm gonna get a visit from the Treasury Department any day now for making that joke.
Han said that we've got a bit of buffering at the moment. Hopefully, we are better now. Let me know. And hopefully the main points of that get through, so that when I actually do have enough time to make highlights videos of these streams, I can do the thing.
Do the thing.
I'm so while we're waiting to see if the buffering has cleared itself up. Hopefully, my futzing with my hair is not distracting to anyone. It's been so long since I've had this much hair that I honestly just. It's new and different all over again. I have no idea what to do with it. It's in the way all the time. And at the moment, it's definitely having I do what I want kind of a day. So I'm just like, I know I'm always futzing with my hair, but especially today.
You see, again, I have a certain degree of empathy for that, because I went from thinning but shoulder length hair to nothing. And I still find myself occasionally having to resist the urge to tee up certain moves where you're like, run your hand through your hair. There's not, okay.
What? Oh, there's nothing there.
Yeah, okay. Kind of a shock to the system when that happens.
Understandable.
Child of the 80s, I was used to having long hair. What are you gonna do? So.
Yeah. I'm still 1 second in every 4 buffers. I don't know what that means.
It means about, might be time to just take a quick moment and reset your router.
Maybe. That is something that I know that we really need to bump up what we are getting for our internet service. We just haven't gotten around to it. I know that there is a service in the area that is offering fiber optic internet connection, and I'm like, I would like, please. I don't just need it for like games, but I also need it for streaming, like sending things out rather than just taking stuff in.
Sorry, now you've got me looking that one up. I run on a mass wireless connection that runs in my apartment. So sometimes it's really, really good. And other times it's, well, you've seen it. So yeah.
Occasionally you've dropped out.
Yeah. And then I return.
Well, I'm closing a couple of windows on my laptop. I'm wondering if maybe that will help a touch. Han's back now. He wanted to refresh so that we could just check and see if we are kind of back on track. Seems to be fixed now, he says. Huzzah. Shoo. Circling back around before I was having trouble. What I was saying, what money? How do? Je ne sais pas. What I sent to you, Dave, was something about the Wall Street Journal putting out an article about a study that predicted, and I'm like semi-quoting here, $15 an hour federal minimum wage could, one, yes, bring pay rises to 27 million workers in the US, two, lift 900,000 workers out of poverty, but also three, cause 1.4 million workers' jobs to be lost.
Right. So let's start with the source.
Well, wait, I gotta say the conclusion first, and then we can get there.
Okay.
The conclusion from that was for, and this is a direct quote now, higher wages would increase the cost of producing goods and services, and businesses would pass some of those increased costs on to customers in the form of higher prices, resulting in reduced demand. So yes, let us first speak on the source, the Wall Street Journal. I need to go back and see which particular group or organization actually produced that study. And then I want to go and see what else the person who put out that article, what else they've written, and what kind of a bent, if any, they seem to have.
Well, to me, the question is more a matter of you have to take a look at the Wall Street Journal as two completely different papers when you read it, because as a news organization, they're really good. I mean, their actual news department is probably one of the best in terms of financials. Their op-ed section, on the other hand, has a very, very strong right-wing bias and tends to take a bend more toward a market libertarian view of the world. So my question begins with is where did that article appear in the paper? And a lot of times these articles are being used as a form of counter propaganda to basically make people worried in advance that, oh, well, you'll see some more money, but you may not have a job. Look, I'll be perfectly honest. If I make more than $15 an hour, and I, begrudge nobody the opportunity to make that. And if that means that if I stop somewhere and have to pay, and also the cost increases that they talk about, usually average out to, somewhere between 5 cents to $1 on a particular item. Fuck it, I'll pay the money. Because if we're going to sit down and talk about economics, we also have to break it down into the beginning parts of how markets work as two different markets, because there is the speculative economy where the vast majority of the actual capital is right now, because that's where you can make or lose the most amount of money very quickly. But the real economy is the thing that's been taking it in the teeth now since, hey, let's pick on Ronald Reagan, because fuck that guy. The shift.
I mean, I am mad.
Yeah, the shift of the economy began during that era, and we got away from the real economy into a speculative economy. And when I say the real economy, that's manufacturing, that's restaurants, that's the actual buying of physical elements using the capital that you have on hand. And that is not as big a moneymaker as the speculative economy is. What I would like to, and the problem is that there's less and less money in the real economy because the vast majority of the money that goes into it comes from lower to middle class incomes buying things like cars and food and diapers for your kids and all the other things that go hand in hand with it. So the more that we have been cutting back on putting money into that, the more that it's actually impacted the real economy. The second that there's actually more money in hand, the more that people will sit down and finally start being able to buy a better class of, both living and luxury goods. I can't see how this does not impact things in a positive way. This is the inverse of the argument of trickle-down economics, where if you cut the taxes, they'll give the money back. Well, that hasn't worked yet. But if you give somebody who's been making $16,000 a year and bump their pay up to about $30,000 a year, they're going to be sitting around going, hey, I can finally do things like buy medicine and a better type of food and all of these other things. It would be a bigger boon to the economy in that sense.
Yeah, they'll also be spending it on more, we'll call them luxury things.
Yeah.
Like takeout food, like $5 coffees. Going going to the movies. Remember when that was a thing?
Oh
Going
yeah.
to the movies, doing any manner of things, going to, the dog boutique, to get their dog properly groomed because they have no idea how to do it. There's dingleberries everywhere. And it'll permeate all those aspects of society and help to not only maintain but grow those areas of life that we all kind of think of as well, and so many people are saying, like, we want to get back to normal. They haven't been able to do any of the non-essential things because we're trying to avoid being in public as much as possible, at least in theory.
That's our story, and we're sticking to it.
and and all of those, like, little, what plenty of people would call, well, that's a frivolous sort of thing, like, oh really? And how austerely do you live, person who makes over $100,000 a year? How austerely do you live? Do you rent out the smallest apartment you could, or did you buy the cheapest house you could, just outright, so that you owned it and you didn't have to pay anything to a bank? All you're paying is property taxes. But you chose a reasonable part of town so that they weren't the worst property tax, but they weren't the best either. They were somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just taking all of that extra money that you made during the year and you're investing it, you're saving it, you're spending it on your kids. Like, I don't know. I find it a little bit annoying that most of the people who tend to talk, and basically look down on people who make less money than them, they're doing it while criticizing the poors for doing things that they themselves do all the time and would fucking bawl like a baby if they did not continue to get to indulge in them on a daily or a weekly basis.
Yes.
Being able to just go to the grocery store and meander about. Remember when you could meander about the grocery store? Where now it's, fucking, now this does remind me of the communist breadline, because it's not a joy to go and get food. It's not like a leisurely activity. You're like, look, this is what I need. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna get my stuff, I'm gonna get out. And I know that not everybody does it like that. I, to be perfectly fair, don't always do that either. But I do try to keep it pretty brief nowadays. But yeah, the disdain for the poor is really unfounded and really belies a lack of self-awareness and awareness of the world around you. If like you just, well, why don't you just not buy coffee? Well, why don't you just do this? Well, why don't you just do that? I don't know. How do you live your fucking life?
I think
You're
that's
so
something.
into individual goddamn liberty, and yet you have no problem telling everybody else how to live their life, so that they could do it exactly like you. And if only they would do the work, and if only they would do exactly what you do, that they too could be millionaires.
But I think
I'm
that
being a
there's an
little
element
salty
of,
and
yeah.
a little I'm caricaturing a little bit.
I
Please
feel you.
continue.
But we see that a lot in that there is an unfortunate side effect of a certain. I mean, there's a variation on this in countries all over the world, but I'm going to pick on
Mm-hmm.
America because that's where I live.
It's
Um,
true.
but where being poor is being seen as a moral failing, and clearly you didn't do anything, you didn't take the steps necessary to do what it is, and that so therefore my personal liberty means I get to tell you that the way you live your life is terrible and stupid. The
Mm-hmm.
idea that I can I would never deny if you can afford the small, simple joy in your life that makes it a little bit more livable at the beginning, whether it's a cup of coffee, a trip to the bakery, whatever it is, for something a little bit special in your life. Why would we deny anyone that? Because especially as it gets more and more difficult to find things in your life that you can enjoy, taking, this is where the arguments continue on about, people are getting more and more angry simply because of the fact that they're getting closer and closer to a subsistence living and the
Hmm.
possibility of having the carpet yanked out from underneath them. It was a comment that I made in response to something that Hans said,
Hmm.
where job instability is seen as a positive in modern business theory because that way you can use the possibility and the threat of somebody losing their job or losing their bigger income as a means of keeping them in a shit position. That's kind of the old golden handcuff theory. All right, well, that's great for you as a business, but what it's really doing is destroying our social stability. And after January 6th, I think we might want to start taking that shit a little bit more seriously.
Right?
People are lividly angry and for good reason. And the problem is that there's been some really effective counterintelligence games going on, or counter propaganda games going on,
Hmm.
pointing them in all the wrong directions, except for the idea that, hey, maybe somebody who has a net worth. I know that it's not liquid capital; it's stock
Hmm.
or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But having somebody who has a cumulative net worth of $250 billion means that a lot of functional capital is stuck in a place where it will never enter the real economy and do any real
Hmm.
good.
Exactly.
And the idea also,
Capital is in and of itself is not inherently evil, but if it's not doing anything for people, then what the fuck is the point of it existing?
right,
And people can, get like, well, I'm building up wealth for my progeny and their progeny and so on and so forth. At the same time, they're never going to be able to spend all that money in their life. And if
or
they
if they,
do, it's going to be in a pretty obscene fashion, like, yes, you purchased this item or this experience that costs this amount of money. But the problem with that is we know that amount of money and what else could have been done with it, what other things could have been accomplished, even if it were, for lack of a better term, a frivolous, fun, just for the joy of it kind of thing
yeah.
for many other people. And I just don't know how we can justify funneling that all into a single person's wealth or into a single family's wealth, whether or not it spans generations.
And also, that's thinking of the idea. I was having this conversation with somebody a year or so ago about the impact of if I were to suddenly find myself with what I think of as an absurd level of wealth. In this case, I'll literally throw it onto billions of dollars because it makes the math easier. I'd sit
Easy
here,
math is good.
yeah, and I sit there and think, okay, so somehow I have $4 billion in my back pocket. All right, great. Um, I could quite literally create a series of structures of organizations that basically businesses and organizations that pay living wages, do things like guarantee that areas of the world that have issues with being able to get their citizenry potable water. Sure, let's do that too.
Hmm.
All of that, and if I have 10% left over when I'm done, that's $400 million. Trust, I could have a nice, relaxing life of nothing but coke and hookers for the rest of my days on $400 million and be just fine, thank you. And I think the problem is that there is a ongoing. Oh, it's
So
something
long
that
as you're paying those hookers a living wage. Thank you very
well,
much.
I mean, that's a gimme. I mean, if somebody, I always figure that if you're going to be paying somebody to be alongside you in bed, you should probably pay them a certain amount, or else, they do know where you sleep and they have access to it. That is, again, that's just villainy 101. Don't treat the people closest to you terribly.
Even if you don't want to think about it in a sense of, oh, they're human beings, it still just is kind of dumb, isn't it?
Yeah, I always start with, especially when you're talking about arguments regarding villainy, always
Hmm.
start with the practical and then put the right
The
thing on
practical
top.
and the selfish, and
Yeah.
then we can build into the other stuff later.
Yeah, then we can actually do the actual moral decent thing alongside of that, and we'll put that as the icing on that particular cake. Because there's always that great line that I stole from Robert Heinlein where he said, look, never ever try to win an argument by working on the better angels of someone's nature. They might not have them. They might not have a better self. So if you sit there and you work on their own sense of self-identity, self-reliance, and their own actual practical needs, that gives you way more leverage. And then we can tell them what a good boy they're being afterward. But the idea of saying I have a net worth of I think it was Elon Musk recently, they said he's at 280 billion in net worth. Serious. Okay. You've won the game. Call it good. You win. You win at capitalism.
I was going to say at that point now is the time to start like putting all the pieces away, folding up the board.
Yeah.
Putting the lid back on the box and pulling out a new game.
Yeah.
Pull out a new game.
And there are certain places
redistribute the shimmery tokens to the rest of the players, and pull out a new game for you to challenge yourself with.
Right. And to me, that's the element where I sit there and go, social instability in the United States is bad enough, but thinking about things like the potable water issue.
Mm-hmm.
There are problems. They're having problems with that in India and Pakistan. And when those two countries start having basic survival issues, I get nervous because both countries have, corporate things, national borders, whatever. But both of those countries have, they routinely fire artillery shells at each other just to keep each other awake. And they both have nuclear weapons. If your citizenry suddenly can't, survive because they don't have water,
or they don't have access to food
or food,
basic medical care,
war becomes an inevitability. And then also take a look at their proximity to China and Russia.
Mm-hmm.
This is a situation that could get out of hand by the time you blink and it went out of hand and everything's all over.
Yeah.
We have to stop thinking about what's good for business, and we have to start giving very, very serious thought to what works in terms of actual social stability, because we have shot way past the point where we actually have any of that anymore.
Well, and you made me think of something. The upset that I hear in folks, whether or not it is influenced by an ignorant fear, an ignorant xenophobic fear.
Yeah.
Even if that's like the base motivation for it, I still hear people get all grumbly about, they're all refugees coming in here. We didn't ask for them. Like, but we also have to recognize that when places are experiencing instability, whether it's due to lack of clean drinking water, lack of food, scrambling over very basic resources, and all of the wealth is starting to funnel into smaller and smaller sections of that society, the rest of the society is going to become unstable, and many of them are going to try and go other places to see if they can make it work there. That's just what fucking happens. And
if you
can't pretend that it doesn't exist and just try to and keep everyone out.
That's the issue where, you take a look at, humanity got its start in Africa, but eventually we worked our way all over the place. And it might be because Todd and Jim had a big argument, and now Jim's moving north. Fuck these guys. It could also just be because people realized that, God, that guy always works my nerve. The other reality is that over time you build up a place, and there's just not at that point in time enough materials for people to be able to live the lives that are necessary to continue on with progress. I think, we also have to take a look at our hand in, especially if we're going to talk about refugees. The United States, the UK, and a few other countries have to sit down and own up to the fact that a lot of the refugee issue are because of things that we have done. And it might not have even been something that we did today. It might have been something that we started 20 or 30 years ago.
Oh yeah, no, it's fucking years, decades, and occasionally centuries in the making. Um, I'm not gonna go too far in depth in it because unfortunately my knowledge base in it isn't as specific as I would like it to be to do the topic justice. But one of the very best classes that I've ever taken was on the history of the Middle East and culturally. Oh no, the thought just went away.
I feel you.
Basically, the history of the Middle East from the time just before Muhammad went into the cave and the angel came to him, and all the way up to current events and the hand that industrialism and imperialism from the UK and later from not the UK, but Britain, the crown, and then later on the US, how that played into it. And it's like you don't even necessarily have to go to a place of saying like, well, it's Britain's fault, it's US's fault, although you could totally do that. The point of the whole class was just to be like, look, actions have reactions, and to distill the idea like, well, the Middle East is unstable because that's just how it's always been and it's because of the people there. Well, no, actions have reactions. There are all of these factors that have come together over time and have set the stage for all that instability that has existed for the past 200 years. And in more recently, let's say like the past 60 to 80 years. But because there were touches of it beginning with World War II and Germany, well, Nazi Germany, and then it kept ramping up into the situations that led to like big giant events like 9/11, and then not necessarily smaller ones because terroristic bombings have been happening forever over in Asia and in the UK. They just don't get quite as much press over here as maybe it might be prudent to give.
As the child of a Irish mixed marriage, I was acutely aware of bombs going off all over the UK. Yeah. And the reasons for it.
Well, see, and there's just yet another example. It's not just because the Irish just one day up and decided, it sounds really great. I think I just want to strap a bomb to myself and hop on a bus and say, "Free Ireland now." I don't actually remember any of the typical slogans that were used with the IRA. See, like I said, I don't have enough specifics on this. Can I just take a quick moment to say, like, look, I don't know anything about economics. I know a little bit about history, but I can't, tell you specific things off of the top of my head. I know enough to like at least start a conversation about it and like talk about general topics.
Yeah,
I'm not under any kind of delusions that I have all the solutions to all the world problems.
And I've been going back and this should actually put it into the show notes, and I'll send you a link for it.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Curtis just released his latest series of documentaries. It's about 6 hours worth of stuff, but it's Adam Curtis, so it's going to be really good. And
is there something from Adam Curtis that I might know?
His most recent one, his most recent one that kind of blew up because it was perfectly timed was a docu he did in 2016, 2017 called Hypernormalization, where he talked about how it is that we got to where we are in today's political landscape, and talking about how it is that a lot of it is actually very much by design. His most recent one is he's talking about the spread of information and how it is also that societies, because of the fact that societies don't come to terms with things that they've done over a period, it leads to issues and such. The first episode of it starts with one of the people that he talks about are the people that would end up forming the Baader Meinhof gang in West Berlin. That was a badass terrorist group that, like when I went to visit Berlin, the Baader Meinhof gang and their offshoot, the Red Army faction, were the reasons why it was that German cops carried submachine guns. They had, they had hardcore terrorism issues, but a lot of it came from German youth in the 60s waking up and going, wait a minute, my parents were members of the Nazi Party? What the fuck else haven't I been told?
That is the thing that happens. I wonder, I sometimes wonder if we are going to see kind of a similar movement happen in the US with the children of people. And when I say children, I don't necessarily mean the adult children. I mean like people who within the last 4 years have been in their adolescence, preteen, very, very, very early teens years. Are they Gen Z? Is that what they are?
I think that's where we're at.
Is Gen Z the kids who are in high school and very early college? I don't understand the naming of generations very much. But I do wonder if maybe that is going to be a thing 10, 20 years down the road. It will be interesting to find out. I'm scrolling back through our chat here now, where I kind of started in with the Wall Street Journal article, and also within that there was a lot of focus on how increasing spending on social safety net / welfare programs, but but also how the increased deficit impact is smaller relative to the last fiscal year's 3.1 trillion deficit. And I suppose this is just going forward. Of course, that hit me with kind of like, oh no, spending more money on our citizens' health and safety. Oh my God. But at that point, I was having thoughts and feelings about the article, and then I kind of broke away for a minute to just like, all right. Let's just say we'll go with state minimum wage. Family of 4, 2 adults, 2 children. They are being as frugal as possible. They are spending $50 per person. Well, no more than $50 per person a week per family member on food. I assumed that they did not qualify for SNAP, which for other folks, food stamps, EBT, but we call it, what is it? Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, I think is what it is.
So,
yeah. They don't drive a car, so they don't have to worry about paying for insurance or anything. They use the metro system that is in our city. I went and looked up how much unlimited rides are, on a month-to-month basis. It's like $50 or $60, so that they could, go to work, go to the grocery store. If we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, presumably take the children to school, public school. And let's see, what else did I include? So the 2 adults are both working state minimum wage jobs. So they make $9 an hour. And they can manage to get the adults individual insurance for as little as I do. So collectively, like about $100 a month for health, eye, and dental. because they're both nearsighted and and occasionally have cavities, no matter how well they brush their teeth. And then I also assumed that the children actually did qualify for children's Medicaid, because from the people who I know in town who actually have children and are kind of strapped for money, a lot of times their kids, just the kids, will qualify for Medicaid. So we assumed that, and generally speaking, the kids are healthy, so we don't have to worry about ongoing chronic conditions or anything like that. The kids have been blessed with either great eyesight and teeth, or just generally don't have a whole lot of problems that can't be covered by Medicaid. The adults both clearly, like, you live in today's world, you can't really, you almost can't not have a phone, and you almost can't not have a phone that is a smartphone, because a lot of times workplaces will have like group chats and group schedules that are set with apps, or at the very least just like Google Docs or something, if they're being really low rent about it. So let's just say that the adults managed to get a really cheap phone plan from Walmart. They managed to find like a semi-shady, actually in Omaha proper, with bus line access, 2-bedroom housing for $650 a month, and their utilities are $100 a month. And I just kind of did that as like an averaging out of what I could find on like usual renting sites, and also looking into Craigslist and a little bit on Facebook Marketplace in the housing section. And right now, so both adults working 40-hour work weeks, not calculating for taxes taken out of paychecks, not calculating for unpaid holidays or sick days for the adults or the children, because sometimes kids get sick and they got to stay home, and parents got to stay home with them because they can afford. Oh, no, I think I did actually include like some here. Let's say they have a relative or a neighbor who they can, trust to watch their kids if they have to work like odd hours or something. They've got about $960 a month to play with for the following: clothing, schooling costs, whether they're homeschooled or public schooled, assuming they qualify for free childcare or have a relative or neighbor who will watch the 2 kids for free when the adults are working, for personal hygiene, products, supplies for each family member, medical and prescription costs not covered under insurance, housekeeping supplies, because even if you live in an apartment, you still have to clean every now and again. You still have to have hand soap to wash. You have to have soap to wash your dishes with. Even if everybody only has their 1 plate and their 1 set of flatware per person, which I have seen some households do. And then, various occasional necessary sundries, like, say, batteries. And then for emergencies, including late fees on things like rent, phone, medical bills, and, just other random bills that pop up. Things can go wrong. And for savings. So, like, after all of that, if you were a single person, I look at having $960 a month to play with and be like, oh shit, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
But for 4 people, especially when you've got children only get more expensive as they grow older.
True that.
And it's not their fault. It's just kind of how it is. But I just, the constant stress of having to constantly, make really hard and fast decisions, maybe not hard and fast. What's the word? Hard found decisions, difficult decisions.
Yeah.
And trying to mete out that money as like frugally as possible. It's fucking stressful to be frugal, even if you're really into it. If it's, frugality because you don't actually have a lot of money versus, because you were just a frugal sort of person and you pride yourself on being very economically efficient with your funds. Well, and also to take into account the fact I have multiple friends who, have been well below the poverty line at multiple times in their lives. And most of the time when they buy food, they can only afford to buy like single serving type of stuff. And a lot of times that single serving stuff, especially if it's like frozen dinners and that kind of thing, especially if you're working 40 hours a week and you have to spend the rest of your time going to and fro on the bus, picking up your children, you don't really have time to cook. So you kind of have to resort to things like frozen dinners. It's not the greatest for your health in the long run.
Which is another cost that will add up over time.
And even if like in the individual thing, like I think a lot of times you can get like Marie calendars, like certain versions of certain meals I see in the frozen aisle. I think sometimes they're like $1 a piece. But even then, it cannot compare with like buying in bulk and cooking for yourself, which seems more expensive in the short term, but over the long term is less expensive. If you are the sort of person who, can make use of cooking for yourself and make sure that all the food gets eaten and actually utilized before it goes bad. But again, if you're living in a rented apartment, you might not have a whole lot of freezer space. So you're not going to be able to freeze a lot of things. You'll have to resort to purchasing a lot of canned food. Again, not great for your health. And canned food is relatively cheap, per unit, but I don't know. I would have to specifically look and like compare a can of corn, let's say, versus like a bag of frozen corn and compare the cost between the two. That's getting down into like my kind of irrelevant minutia, but I'm getting it's not even my life and I'm stressed about it.
A few years ago, I was just sitting here being a little bit nostalgic for the good old days. Haha.
When were those?
In this case, my nostalgia. I'm of course being a little sarcastic, but I was thinking of 2014 when I moved into the place that I live now,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that was forced by economic necessity. I don't have to pay for internet here, so that was a big plus. And then the rent was, and at the time I also didn't have to pay for heat because it was all radiator heat. That's changed over the last few years.
Yeah.
But basically, there were a few weeks where, due to paying off bills and paying down debts and doing all of the other stuff, where I had about $70 to last me for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was
That's
me.
terrifying.
Yeah, when you're sitting there and going, I am literally a check engine light away from just being destitute.
Mm-hmm.
And the moments when you're sitting there and you're like looking for any opportunity to pick up some overtime or something else, so that way you can have a few extra dollars in your pocket, which is
Mm-hmm.
also another ongoing stress that the working class have to deal with. That you want to see, when people are sitting around talking about how it is that the working class are poor because they're lazy, motherfuckers, some of these people are working 3 jobs, 2 of them
Yeah.
full time, and they're still fighting to keep their head
And
above water.
in many cases, also being a caregiver, whether it's to a parent or another elderly relative, or for their children.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's kind of infuriating to have people look at you.
don't fucking talk to me about lazy.
Yeah. I'm a lot of the people I know are out there. I look at the people who do housekeeping at the hospital that I work at,
Mm-hmm.
and like a lot of them are doing like 2 or sometimes 3 double shifts in a week. That's 16 hours. The money's nice, but it's,
When do you sleep?
yeah, when do you sleep? Even more importantly, when do you live?
When do you see your family?
Yeah. And then that's the other thing, is that people are like, well, their kids are all terrible and this and that. That's because there's not a parent in the house to give them any degree of guidance because they're out there working. Again, back to social
They're trying,
stability.
yeah, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. How the more esoteric on the emotional side of things, the emotional needs, the immaterial needs, are kind of going untended to. I don't think it's just with folks in more right-leaning or ultra-conservative geographical places. I think it's also just people who don't even have any time to have any kind of opinions about people who are different from them or anything, because they've got 4 jobs and they have 2 kids to take care of and a parent to take care of. But at the same time, yeah, they're out of the house. The kids' emotional and intellectual needs are going unmet in a lot of places. Yeah. And so again, you made this, and you is kind of a collective term. It's we did this. Yeah. We did this. And I want to be very clear. I am lazy. So the rich are correct about me. I am lazy, and I do love avocado toast. And I do think that there should at least be some kind of, I hesitate to use the word free because that sets off a lot of alarm bells for people, but I don't know, public. There needs to be unpaid public, just kind of a general blanket higher education. And I would say that does not mean free college, okay? Because yes, a lot of jobs are now, or a lot of jobs in a lot of industries are skewing more technical, more hard skills rather than like manual labor skills. But people should also have the opportunity to, after they've gone through their basic learning how to learn type of schooling, grade school and secondary school. After you do that, then you should have the opportunity to, if you want to pursue some type of very technical education, be it computer programming or something in the medical industry, surgery, for example, that's a very technical one, or in something like law, because you even if you want to be a pro bono lawyer, the other folks should be given opportunities to enter apprenticeships, and if you just allow people to figure out what they're passionate about and what they're good at, because it's not always the same thing. You can be really passionate about something and not be good enough at it to be able to like contribute to others with the passion and knowledge that you do have. That's still okay, because it can lead you to the thing that you can contribute to the lives of others and your own life, instead of trying to say like, well, we have these jobs and these jobs need to be filled. With the increasing automation, that's a hard word to say.
I understand.
The robots are taking over. That's what I'm trying to say. And I don't know. Would you say, even though I know for a lot of people who are at the head of companies, they would view automation, did I say it correctly? I'm hoping I did. The robots, cutting down on labor costs and making whatever service or product that they are producing more efficient. There are less fuck ups, so you have less quality control time that is being spent fixing said fuck ups. Then yes, you get more money, but at the same time, I do wonder, maybe the instituting robots into the general workplace. Maybe it was a secret villainous plan of like, yes, yes, we will take all the mundane and hard labor jobs and give them to the robots so that you will have time to find out what you're really good at and how you could truly contribute to your society.
That would have been.
You're going to be able to spend time with your family because you don't have to be here for 10 hours a day. You only have to be here for 4. Villainy.
Yes. You see that is the actual approach that should have been taken. The problem is that we're dealing with, again, the notion that economics in and of itself is a game and you win by, collecting the most stuff. And the problem is that we are now stuck in a situation, especially in America, where capitalism is being confused with a system that allows maximum freedom, and it's not really how it works. If it were me and if I was sitting around as Dr. Zodiac and I was in charge of everything, vote for me, everyone. Yes, please.
I'll make the t-shirts.
Yeah, vote for Dr. Zodiac. A vote for Dr. Zodiac is a vote for, well, we'll figure what that is. You'll find out.
We'll punch it up. We'll workshop it. Right. We'll capture some hostages. We'll stick them in a room and say, pick your favorite t-shirt or die.
Yeah. You, does this shirt excite you? No? Okay, hold on. I'll be right back.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
How would you make it better? Thank you for your cooperation.
And then we drop them off somewhere, and they find out that
they fall out of the van dazed. Oh God, what happened? And why do I have 2 bags of swag like I just came from a convention?
I'm in front of a taco place and they're saying I've got a free meal ahead of me. Look, if I'm going to kidnap you, there's always a bonus side to this.
Oh yeah.
But to me, I think that if we were to sit down and view this as in what I think of as a sane world, automation would be something that we would use to free up the vast majority of the people from the sort of day-to-day work that turns people into drones. I forwarded you along that thing on government in the future. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I find most fascinating about it was I had not really realized the sheer and it's one thing to hear about the impact of the Industrial Revolution. It is quite another to hear and read philosophers talking about the impact of it and the way that it was literally changing the defined roles of society, where people suddenly were now just being treated as cogs in the machine, because at that point in time they were. It was and we still suffer from this offshoot of a feudal mindset that says that we can treat people in this particular way because they are still serfs and cogs in the machine. If we were to use automation in an intelligent way, then what we would do is sit there and go, all right, now that we've taken this job that drove you crazy because it was 8 hours of the most mind-numbing, unfulfilling work you could do in your life, how about we switch it up a little bit? Let's talk about what kind of labor would you not feel alienated from? How about we create a circumstance where, the vast majority of that kind of hard, for lack of any other way of putting it, robotic labor is being done by robots, and instead create a circumstance in which we educate people to actually decide what it is something that fulfills them, and then create a world wherein you can fill that role that fulfills you most. Like I was saying, not everybody wants to work on an assembly line to build cars, but I know a lot of people who love to work on cars and make them better.
Yeah.
And these are 2 completely different functions, and one of them requires almost no skills to do, and the other one requires you to spend a lot of time developing skills, but it becomes something that helps you to become a more filled out and functioning human being.
Exactly. And I don't think that there's necessarily any reason that you couldn't have, a few places that still followed that, human powered assembly line. Because I think for some people that actually would work out. The, kind of mindless, repetitive, it wouldn't be great for repetitive motion injuries, but, if they didn't have crappy joints and soft tissues like I do, maybe they'd be fine with it. And during that time, they can actually focus inward and think great thoughts and come up with all sorts of great things, and then they could share those things. That might suit some people. I also think at a certain point, like we're gonna have to, and maybe certain people are already still talking. This may be the whole like come into that phrase that I see all the time in my news feed. Look at these two. It's not my news feed, but it's like sponsored ads. Look at these two disruptors who are taking the blank industry by storm. And a lot of times, the disruption is that they're creating a product that you will never need to buy again, basically,
Right.
or a service that you buy once and never again. And you mentioned cars. I think cars and other pieces of technology, like obviously, as we go forward, we're going to keep. I don't see us trying to slow down our technological progress anytime soon. I feel like we have too much bloodlust for it now, and we're just gonna like keep wanting more and more and more and more and more and more of it. To be fair, without technological progress, we would not be able to do this right now. Yep. But building things to last and being okay that eventually you will have saturated your target sales audience, as it were. Like, why do you have to make the same thing for your entire career? Like if it's, say your company, why wouldn't you be okay with like handing that off to someone else who wants to work on improvements for it, even though they won't get instituted for another 10 years, because again, the buyer market has kind of been saturated for that particular product, and then move on to a different thing, whether it's a different product or an offshoot of the one that you made before. That seems like it'd be more fulfilling to CEOs too, or owners of companies would. I don't know. In addition to not understanding economics, I don't understand corporate power structures.
I have existed in corporations for so long that I understand the mindsets
What
really
is that
well.
like? I have gotten like this close to it once, and every other time it was a super, super small operation. So there was no corporate, except for one time.
Having worked for what is, I'm pretty sure, the largest medical supplier in the world, Becton Dickinson, and there's one story moment in there that absolutely fascinated me, and it's still one of the oddest moments I've had working at a job. Was they decided to actually allow the teams to direct themselves. We're on the floor. We're the people who know what's going on. We know how to fix the problems better than middle management do. Okay, fine. So we started sitting down and having committee meetings. I mean, this was flat out pure looking at it. This would have been, if you look at it, this would have done really, really well in the Soviet era in terms of how things were organized. But we all were given a set of goals. Now, how are we going to meet these goals? All right, fine. We're the people who do this job. We know how to do it. And the first goal that we were given was, on average, I think everybody there was working 8 to 12 hours a week in overtime. Well, that's a cost that adds up pretty quickly for an employer. So they're like, okay, cut the cost back, and then we'll cut you guys a bonus in this area. All right, sounds good. We had like 2 or 3 meetings, evened out how the process was going to be done. Within about 2 months, there was no overtime. Everybody was able to go home on Friday and not come back until Monday. It was kind of awesome. But what it also was a threat to elements of middle management. I am to this day absolutely convinced that they put, like, we had, within about 6 months of doing this, we had a new hire on the floor, and all he could do was bitch about doing these meetings and this and that, and he kept trying to disrupt things. And you can't tell me that this guy was not some sort of plant to try to disrupt this. Because within about 2 years, they were like, well, that was a great experiment. That was really efficient. We're going to go back to the way that we did things.
No.
The other thing that was interesting
Why can't
was,
we just build on what's here now?
right, because in terms of the
Don't
actual
go back
structure
to
of
the
things,
old way.
right, in terms of the actual structure of things, we got really efficient. We were able to handle things. And I think that scared the shit out of a lot of people. The other element to this was thinking about it. Becton Dickinson is a corporation that literally has plants on every continent in the world. And we, at one point in time, were in very, very fierce competition with another steel plant in Brazil. And the constant threat was always, well, look, you guys need to get this down and make these things and up your levels of efficiency, because if not, they'll just ship all that stuff down south. And we're like, okay, that's an incentive plan. But the idea that we were competing for our jobs inside of a corporation with a different element of it, and we eventually won that battle bigger than life. But
Well, that's good anyway.
yeah, but at the same time, that also meant that there
But the
were people
time getting there.
yeah, the time getting there, the level of stress. And also, by the time we were done, that also meant that the people in Brazil were employing fewer people because we had more or less lowered their overall demand because we were putting out stuff faster, putting it out cheaper, and doing a more efficient job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. Competition to me is a good thing. When we sit down and, I am like, we need to do this better than that team does. I love to be able to compete. Like, when we're performing shows, I want to, I know you're going to get up there, but I want to make sure that when I walk off stage, they remember me and they're wondering who that chick was over there, and you do it too.
I don't know her.
Yeah. And then you do it too, because you want to have the best show of the night. Everybody
Well,
does.
I mean,
So
never let it be said that that I don't want to put out the best show ever. If that's not the mood I'm in, something's up.
I shouldn't be walking on stage if I'm in the mood to sit there and crap, a show bigger than life. But to me, I think that the key part is that I want to create a circumstance where success is something that is available to everyone, and not available as it's an automatic success. I'm not giving you a participation trophy. What I'm doing is giving you a chance to get up there and develop yourself. And watching the competition amongst the samurai was always fun for me, because everybody wanted to up their game. And you came in there your first time, and
oh God, we're gonna talk about this.
people would kind of applaud and this and that. And then after about 6 months, you would walk off stage and you'd just blown the doors off the place. Competition should, to my mind, be something where we all, as a result of that competition, get better at our game. I am not looking to destroy anybody else. Competition on that level is best left to wars or best left to sporting events. That is the only place where it should exist.
Yeah, no, folks who are big proponents of the free market and all that are constantly talking about, well, if you just had the government do everything, then there would be no competition and no one would ever do anything better. So competition is a good thing. And in some ways, yes, absolutely, for the reasons that you say, not just because like you kind of have a personal drive, a non-malicious, hopefully, personal drive to kind of up your game so that maybe your round of applause lingers just a little bit longer than the person who came before you. But also, like, it's not just, do you do it better? Do you do it worse than your competition? But people do things differently because, whether you're offering a service or a product, not everybody is going to need the product or the service the way that you put it out. They may be more suited, or it may suit their particular situation better if the product or service looks a little bit more like how this person over here puts it out. And, you shouldn't be trying to serve everyone because you can't. And you also shouldn't try to be the only game in town, because then you defeat the purpose of what you said you wanted in the first place, competition. So that, I don't know, the whole like, so the cream can rise to the top thing. I don't think that It's an idea in theory that, but in the real world, I don't think that's how it happens. It's not that the best rises to the top. It's, well, no, it's a combination of a lot of factors. And one of those factors is how much capital did you have to put in to begin with? How much time and energy were you and the people who have a lot of the power in your company have to spend into, helping you rise to the top? It's not just any one thing. It's not as simple as, well, we make the best product or we offer the most comprehensive service. Because everybody needs something a little bit different. Everybody lives a little bit differently. Everyone has different physiology, different family and relationship setups, different work setups. And so they're going to need different things. You want that variety, just like with human genetics. Diversity is a good thing.
And to me, I think the element of competition is the idea of, again, I thinking about providing a good or a service in a way that actually suits the person who's buying it. At McDonald's, a Big Mac is a Big Mac is a Big Mac. You know what you're getting. But that's also part of the reason that I go to McDonald's about once a year, because at that point in time, it was the only place that was open at that hour. I would just as soon prefer to find the place where I sit down and enjoy the meal that I really, really wanted, because their sense of taste palette absolutely works with mine.
Mm-hmm.
And that place may not be the one that you really enjoy that much, but it's a diversity of ideas, it's a diversity of products brought to the market, and eventually those products can find an audience if you give it the opportunity to be found.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is a
And
far
the
more.
goal shouldn't be to, beat them out so that they never have a chance to find their market so that you can take their customer base. I, I shouldn't have
It's
said it.
Yep. But the problem, I think it all boils down to, again, and this is a theme that we're going to keep coming back to, is business and competition are consistently seen as zero-sum games. There has to be a
Mm-hmm.
winner, there has to be a loser.
Just,
Um,
no.
no, one of my favorite places in town to go to just to like hang out
Mm-hmm.
is a bar where by and large the audience there is about 20 to 30 people, but it's consistent and it's the environment that I enjoy and all of that. I also know that there are nightclubs in town that routinely have, pre-COVID and unfortunately sometimes during COVID, but there are
Sorry, I
places
got
in town,
nostalgic.
yeah, that seat 600 to 700 on a routine basis, and they're making money hand over fist. But
Mm.
that's not my environment, and for some people it is. The
Mm-hmm.
ability to sit down and create a set of products that can allow every audience to find the place where they belong is kind of the key part of how I view competition. Because Jerry's Bar is absolutely the sort of place that I want to spend my time hanging out at. I don't necessarily want to spend my time hanging out at the dance club because A, I suck at dancing, and B, as a sound engineer, I think it's too loud and the mixing is terrible on all of this shit.
Womp, 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 womp.
Yeah,
Boots
if I
and
walk
pants,
out,
boots and pants, and boots and pants.
if I'm going to bed and I'm still getting the thump of bass drums in the head, you mix that whole fucking thing wrong.
I wanted to ask, did you bring up McDonald's because I'm drinking out of a McDonald's cup?
No, actually, I brought up McDonald's because they're always a good example. And to be perfectly honest, there is a part of me right now that is having my Baby Yoda Nuggies moment, and
Nuggies.
Nuggies. I
Yeah,
just love
no,
the fact that the audience decided that Baby Yoda is a big Chicken Nuggies fan.
yeah, he
Yeah,
is. Like, it seems pretty obvious just by looking at him.
yeah.
What's his actual name? Grogu? Gorguru?
Gorgru.
Jeremy. What's the child's name? Grogu? Grogu. Okay. Uh, after review filming earlier, Move came up earlier and was like, "Would you like a cup of blue?" And like, ooh, it's got
Yeah,
electrolytes.
yeah. That's what plants crave.
It is what plants crave, and I am in fact a plant.
But yeah, and the entire idea is thank you. Um,
Yes, Grogu.
Han just responded. I had it. It'll be there in a moment.
Wait.
But the idea that one of the costs that is the easiest for businesses to control in-house, because a lot of times, you're dealing with suppliers and they may have an increase in prices, or you may have to deal with this or that. But you know what? I can make sure that I can keep my employees at a certain point and keep that money at a certain level. And it can be the one constant in a business that they can count on, or that they are told that they can count on. The problem then also becomes that using that as a barometer, you don't allow people the opportunity to rise past the station that they've been given. You don't allow them to have a better life or a better opportunity. To me, it seems as though we need to take a good hard look in a philosophical sense at what it is that we do business wise and why we do it.
Don't get into business to make money. Like,
I mean,
because then that's all it's ever going to be, and that might satisfy you internally for a little while. You may even convince yourself that it satisfies you for a long while after that, but it's not gonna making money for the sake of making money is not gonna feed your soul. And are you quoting something, or no, are you challenging?
It's hard to feed your soul when your belly is empty.
Well, we were talking specifically like business owners, not the people who work for the business. And not to be fair, like plenty of business owners, especially small business owners, do kind of struggle to feed themselves. It's not just it's not just their employees that can have issues. They can have issues too.
And I understand that, and I'm totally empathetic with it. I guess that my primary argument has always been aimed at the larger function of corporate America and how it is that big business, in that sense, is always, to me at least, driven by this idea of, if I can get an extra 1/10 of 1% out of it by doing this, and it turns out to be something that doesn't necessarily help the people on the ground.
Like the 0.1% more efficient, the 1/10 of a cent reduction in cost. Getting like supremely overly nitpicky over that sort of thing. I understand, like, again, if you're a small business owner and you have to, and I actually appreciate this a little bit better than I maybe would have, say like 10 years ago, after going through the whole rigmarole of trying to analyze whether or not the business that I currently work in has been profitable over the last 5 years, and where there was kind of just where there was low profit and where there was high profit, because there are different parts of sales, and what your operating costs are and what your supply costs are, what's working for you, what's not working, what's losing money, what's helping actually put you in the green, rather than just at what's it called when you don't have a profit and you don't have a loss, just
breaking even. Yeah,
breaking even, there we go. Yeah. Even if you're just getting that range of things, looking over all of that, it's incredibly stressful to have to go through and analyze all of that, and in some cases make really difficult decisions about whether you have to cut your labor, or if you have to, start searching for suppliers who will give you lower cost supplies, or if you have to downsize a little bit, and if you have to narrow your focus of who your audience is going to be.
Yeah.
One of the things that is happening at work right now, it's not necessarily in my department, but they have been taking on a lot of like big money jobs, but they are running into the problem more and more and more, especially with one of these last ones. They just don't physically have the room to work on these giant money jobs. You can't only see the dollar signs, you have to see the real physical components to in that you're working within. Now that doesn't necessarily that's not, you know, like a one-to-one to what we were talking about, but at the same time, looking at the dollar signs versus like, okay, here's what you physically have to work with, and here is how this affects the people who are doing the work. Because you can't just look at the end result and say, but it will be this much monies.
Yes.
How you get to that point, and whether or not it's, first of all, realistic and feasible, and second of all, if it's going to destroy people in the process. Because if you destroy the people, then you're going to have an unstable working environment or an unstable geographic location. And if you don't, if that instability becomes regular and it becomes, you know, the highs and lows get even greater and greater and greater, the instability is just going to get worse, and you're either going to lose the people that you have. We're back to the work analogy again. You're either going to lose the people that you have, or they're going to be knocked out of commission for you know, a really God, I can't think of adjectives today. A really bad amount of time. Where's my thesaurus? An amount of time that is going to make it difficult to bring them back in on other projects when they're able to come back again. And it has to be that balance between, you know, like recognizing people's material needs, like food in the belly. I haven't forgotten them.
Yeah.
We're not all just, we're not merely waxing philosophic over here. We also want to attend to the material needs of the people. But then at the same time, you also have to take into account that immaterial, that emotional, that intellectual side of things that will keep everything relatively stable. It's both. It's always going to be both. It's never going to be one or the other. And if you, we are very Buddhist about so many things. You and I, like me with the Lord of the Flies, about no, you got to have the darkness and you have to have the civility. And me, no, you can't just have the material and the immaterial. You have to have both. Or not Buddhist, but Taoist.
Yeah, it's something though. In thinking about that's
both.
something. Yeah, something that's kind of been one of my bigger issues, especially over the last 20 years or so, taking a look at the larger form of how it is that business works and the accumulation of capital toward the top.
It's like bananas. So try and figure it out.
Well, the thing that I'm still aside from saying, "Hey, I want more toys, I want more this or anything else," there's no. I
Which
mean,
totally feel you on.
There are plenty of toys that I would like to have, but the things that I might be asked to do them, I wouldn't be that interested in handling. But there doesn't seem to be, and I think it's kind of a function of it, there doesn't seem to be a higher order or a higher reason for any of this to be happening aside from make more money. And then that point one, that 1 percentage point underneath your, past the 1%, it becomes so vital because then you're making more money. But what's the end game? At what point do you suddenly stop and go, there's no point, rhyme, or reason for this aside from making money in that sense? It's becomes something that the analogy to cancer becomes more and more obvious as you go along, that the idea that all you're doing is accumulating money for the sake of accumulating money, but then you're not doing anything with it. Again, I'm still back at the idea of people having billions of dollars and then deciding, yeah, I'm just going to sit on billions of dollars that will therefore accrue and become more money just through the basis of putting it into even in low relatively low interest bonds, you could happily live off of the sheer amount of money that some of these people have.
Yeah.
And to me, I still kind of go with, if there's the running memes that plenty of people have had about, none of these people have become Batman, none of these people have done this. If I had Elon Musk's access to both capital and technology, I'm reasonably certain that people wouldn't be hurting for water. Yeah, I'm going to keep
I
coming
would
back to
hire
that one.
a whole family of bats, and they will bring clean drinking water to all the places that are lacking in it.
Yep,
including
that to me,
Flint.
Yeah, that to me, again, Flint is a great example. If I was sitting around and I had a few billion in my back pocket, I would have probably contacted the city of Flint and said, "How much does it cost? Tell me." Because in the end,
what needs to be done?
What needs to be done, and I'm old enough at this point in time where the notion of unfucking the world kind of is important to me.
Mm.
Now, mind you, I would also, once I'm done, giving Flint fixing their water problem and creating jobs where people would have living wages and all of that, I would celebrate all of this by driving my Lamborghini out to the estate and throwing a big ass party, because my selflessness only goes so far, and I'm aware that I like toys. But
you're
I think
allowed to like things. You're allowed to, have luxury items. I don't think luxury items are bad necessarily. It's when that becomes kind of the end all be all goal of everything ever.
I shot the house of a guy. Shot for a real estate. He was selling his home. Guy who owned a investment business out here in Omaha. I think he's now in Texas, which now is a bit of a chuckle for me. To me, but one of the things that blew me away about his house was he had an 11-car garage.
Whew.
Yeah. And he had a car in each one, and I think the cheapest one was like $120,000. I have a fondness for super and hyper cars, so I have an itemized catalog of quite a few of them in my head. But then that thought also hit me. Yeah, and how many of these can you drive at once? At what point does it make sense to own a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, a Porsche, and all of these other things when you can really only drive one at a time?
I was going to say, at that point, what you've got to do is you've got to find 10 of your friends who are ready to be superheroes with you, because then you can all go out in the Lamborghini, the Porsche, and et cetera, what was it, the 1970 Chevy Nova and the 440 Dodge Challenger.
Yep.
That was the engine size. I don't remember the year.
Yeah, I think it was like a 1960 something. We were watching Death Proof earlier for people who weren't.
It was a sexy car. That's all you need to know. It was a sexy, sexy car. There were a lot of sexy cars in that movie.
Yeah, but again, there's a degree of having toys is cool, but at a certain point in time, you can only play with X number of them. There's only so many of them you can fit into your day. And I don't know, it also feels a little bit neglectful to have that sort of stuff lying around and not using it. Now, on the other hand,
even if you have a dust cover on it, it's still going to be collecting dust unless you also have the time to, clean and buff them, just on a rotating schedule once every 11 days.
I figure if I've got the money necessary to do that, I can also provide a living wage for the people who are going to take care of my fucking cars for me. But again, I look at each one of those cars and think, like, the cheapest one was like $120,000, and he had a couple in there that were worth upwards of $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, what can you do with $120,000 that would be one less car in your garage that you wouldn't notice? Hey, oh, I could send somebody to college on that shit. I could do.
You could.
I could
Pretty
do.
good college.
Yeah, I could do a whole lot of things with that cash that would make the world a better place, make the world a more stable place. Oh, and then hey, I've still got my Mercedes, I've got my Porsche, and my Lamborghini, depending upon how I'm feeling on that day.
Yeah. Well,
This
and you know,
escapes
you don't
me on a
even have
basic
to
level.
necessarily go so far as like make the world a better place. It's just like my one tiny corner of it, you know, just my local community. You can give that money to a school that is in desperate need of renovation, that still has lead paint and lead tiles in certain portions of the school that you know, they just try to avoid as best as possible but can't entirely.
I mean, that would be half the fun of it for
there,
me. Is to
there
sit
are
there and
plenty
show
of
up and
things that you could do with it.
yeah, show up with my giant fucking checkbook, walk into the local board of education, and go, "Which of your schools is the most critically underfunded?"
Well, and
You know,
we're running a little bit out of time here. So I do want to like bring us back around in 2 weeks to this again,
mhm,
because we've actually kind of entered into the territory of like, you know, would that we two were bazillionaires, you know, we would be the most philanthropic philanthropists ever. The whole idea of, you know, like individuals with massive amounts of wealth and, you know, individuals with a moderate amount of wealth,
yeah,
redistributing it to the community as an act of charity and relying on that as, you know, what's going to take care of the less fortunate, as opposed to having things like social safety net and welfare programs. Um, there are two videos that I am going to, immediately after I end the stream, I'm going to link them in the description. Two videos. One is from Abigail Thorn, one of her more recent videos. I think it's just entitled "Work,"
yeah.
and like one of the constant lines is, "Oh no, unless that might be in one of Natalie's videos. Why is your shitty job so shitty?"
Actually,
But I think maybe Abigail might have actually said that phrase, maybe in an homage.
uh,
Um, but then so Work by Abigail Thorn on Philosophy Tube, and then I can't remember the actual title of it, but there is a specific video by Angie Speaks on YouTube that kind of looks at the whole disdain of the poor,
yeah,
and going back to the workhouses in Britain and how that mentality started before that, with certain folks who may or may not have had a hand in making eugenics a thing eventually.
oh yeah,
But
those guys.
also how it's carried forward after the workhouses, even after like the last one was like officially put out of commission. I'm going to link those into the description, and in 2 weeks' time, I'd like us to kind of go over what both of those videos look at, and just again do what we normally do. We tease out the stuffs and the thoughts and the things, even though we know for certain that we know nothing for certain. All we're trying to do is just find a slightly better way than what we're doing now, and kind of look at, you know, like individual charity versus folks collectively getting together and kind of pooling their resources in order to give back to all of them, and not just the less fortunate, but, you know, what might it look like if it were just sort of a blanket thing, rather than you know, the haves and the haves not have
Yeah,
nots. Which one is it? I'll look up
have
that too and link that in the description. It's probably going to be a Grammarist article. Um, I noticed that Starhawk was jumping in for a second, and I caught in the chat philanthropists, and I'm dying.
that is. I think that should actually
How
be
dare you?
when we actually get to a certain point with this and we start making our own merch. That's the first one, and we will totally credit Starhawk for that one.
I'm not a villain. I'm not a philanthropist. I'm a philanthropist. My supervillainy goes to benefit others in society.
And then I collect a percentage and drive away in my Lamborghini.
There are also a couple of things that Han has said here and there that I'm gonna transcribe the chat later and pull some things. So thank you for starting up thoughts for me, Han. I appreciate that, as per usual. And also thank you again for actually spelling out Grogu. I can't say words.
I too fail at word thing with stuff, and yes.
What do how make word things speak? Next week is going to be a popcorn episode. I don't know if you will be able to join.
I will most likely be able to join. The circumstances that kept me from arriving last week will hopefully not repeat themselves. So I should be available.
And if they do, you know, like I said, I won't murder you over it. I will just make your life a living hell for about a week. Then I have to start working on like contingency plans just in case you're not able to. Because there's a whole lot of paperwork to go through as far as assigning minions to specific teams. And you know, telling them which part of your life that they've got to go and ruin just for a week. Like more than that would be an excess. And I am not a person who enjoys excess. My God.
Depends upon the excess, but yeah, we can discuss that at some other time.
I think Star has volunteered for the team to make your life miserable. I'm not sure. Oh, heavens to Betsy. Do you have any final thoughts there, my dear doctor?
Hey, consider, and I'm actually, now that Starhawk has given me this concept, consider the ideas of what it is that we could do with philanthropy. Because sometimes I think that people look at the idea of our rules, but the rules exist for a reason. Being a villain is also about having a degree of, for lack of any other way of putting it, class, and also an ability to prove that the reason why it is that we are able to do all of these horrible things to the people who truly deserve it is that because we are on some level better than them, if for no other reason, simply by our behavior. So give it a little thought.
Go ahead.
Yep. So yeah, go with the idea. I'm loving the idea of philanthropy, and we should examine that a bit more as we go through during the week.
Yes. I will never ever say that I am better than any person ever. I don't feel like I can say that with any particular certainty, but that's me. I don't have any other final words other than Han, I did not choose this excessively large drinking cup. It was bestowed upon me.
Yes.
By my dear Ghost Mustache Patrick Swayze. We're gonna have to come up with a new name because it's not just a mustache anymore. It's a voluminous beard of great magnitude. As per always, thank you for everyone who was able to jump in, even if it was only for a minute. And if you're able to watch this later, well, hey, thanks for watching later. I hope you are able to join us next time. Next week is Popcorn episode. It's going to be fun and goofy. I don't think I'll be able to come up with an episode title in advance for next week and give people an idea of what will be coming. Because like I said, next week, I will still be working for most of the week. But the following week, I'll have time to prepare stuff for our next prosperity episode. My goodness, what a thought, what a thought. If you are able, and if you enjoyed what you saw here today, please give us a like, leave us a comment. We love those pretty analytics to look at. And do join us next time. If you would like to hop on my Discord, if you are in the mood for, just some cute things to help you get through your day, or if you'd like 1001 media recommendations, whether it's for video games, board games, films and television, literature, whatever. There's all kinds of things there, and occasionally we have a serious discussion, semi like what we do here. So you can find the link to that down in the description. And if you are on the Twitters and you haven't fled them because it's a burning trash pile sometimes, you can find both the good doctor, there, he's over there, the good doctor, and myself on there. He probably updates more frequently than I do, but he's also an excellent source for cute things. Many of the cute things I put on my Discord often originate on his Twitter. Most of the time, I just post odd things. I retweet a lot of things. Occasionally, I hope people get a chuckle out of it. Everybody, please have a safe and pleasant weekend. This was just going to be a one-time thing, as I've been listening back to things to try and get an idea of what I'm going to do for the highlights videos. But I've noticed that I've done it almost every time, so I'm just going to do it again. If you don't have time this weekend to do something that you truly enjoy, at the very least, please take a few minutes, if not an hour, to just sit and do nothing. You can think if you need to. You can stare at the wall, you can look outside, but just do nothing, because you don't have to produce anything. Even if you have free time, you know, make sure your regular life is taken care of and the people and the things you're responsible for are taken care of. But every now and again, do something you like, or do something that is nothing at all. Much love. Everybody have a good weekend. Bye-bye now.